Hey everybody, yep, there we go. Hi everybody, welcome to the Infinite Lorcana podcast, the podcast where we talk about our Lorcana. I'm Jeremy Bertarioni.
And I'm Syed.
And what we have for you guys this week is, last weekend we went to a Lorcana 1K in Tennessee, sort of close to Nashville. We drove up from Atlanta. It was about a 3-hour drive. There's a Buc-ee's on the way. And, this was just... It was really nostalgic for me because I was reminded of the old SCG IQ days where you would travel 2 or 3 hours to get to some kind of like weird tournament that was in a basement or whatever, and you just had to duke it out with the real grinders.
Yeah, it was a real basement.
Okay, so I played Yellow Steel. I've been on that deck the past few weeks. I really sort of just like kind of nose to the grindstone, like get in there, get on the field, try to get card advantage with the yellow creatures, gameplay that it provides. I can post a list on my Twitter for you guys to follow. But I guess what I really like about it, the innovations that Zan sort of made to the deck and I believe in are, we're not playing a whole new worlds. The reason for that is because you try to get card advantage with the You Have Forgotten Me card that Amber has. You try to get card advantage with Surfer Stitch and Rapunzel, and it feels like if you spend all that time drawing cards, then you're going to have more cards in hand than your opponent, and so it seems weird to then also want to cast a whole new world, because that sort of undoes all the card advantage you get. So I think that it's better not to erase all that progress. And then what we have instead of that card is we're playing Beast Mirror, because that's the similar type of thing where if you run out, you can still keep pace with the Ruby Amethyst decks. So that's what I was playing, Yellow Steel. Zan, tell them what you had in your deck box.
I was playing Ruby Amethyst. That's like the tier 1 villain deck. The deck has answers to everything in the format. Your hardest matchup is probably the mirror match.
Hardest matchup is a mirror match. I think later on in the episode, we're going to talk about it. We're going to do probably a little bit of a deep dive in like how to beat the mirror, because you're pretty much an expert at this point in how to beat the mirror.
Definitely.
I have my own thoughts, but I've only really been in the position probably 2 or 3 times in tournaments, so not very often. Because if I am playing red-black, I maybe will play against the mirror once. So I think you definitely have a lot more experience in that regard in terms of beating the mirror. But I wanted to do a quick tournament report.
Yeah, go for it.
This is honestly probably the weirdest tournament I've ever played in. And I've been playing competitive Magic for like 15 years. And then not only that, but people who like follow me know that I have like the weirdest tournaments that anyone has.
That's true.
I remember one tournament I was playing Death Shadow and I like forgot to register a basic. And so like I asked the judge what would happen if I threw one of my Kolaghan's commands in the trash can, and he was like, we'd have to replace it with a basic land. And I was like, that's perfect. I needed a swamp in my deck, so I like did that to put a swamp in my deck. I remember another tournament that was a team tournament that we played where like I was playing 64 cards for most of the day because I had 4 Glacial Fortresses in my blue-white control deck in Standard, but Glacial Fortress wasn't actually legal. So I like have weird tournaments.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that don't know what Jeremy's talking about, he's talking about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
And he's just the rules are almost identical, so you can imagine that him having more than 60 cards is a disadvantage.
So we get there, we get to the venue is in Texas. I don't want to say the name of this venue because I kind of liked the owner. I think the owner kind of had a little bit of charisma to him, and they might do more events, and I would go to another event. But let's just to set the scene. If you've ever been to like a private practice doctor's office or a dentist's office that was in one of those like low to the ground brick buildings, it was in one of those. So when we pull up to the car, it's me, Zan Syed, and then Kendall Burdett. Kendall Burdett obviously been making big waves in Georgia and around the nation, playing 1Ks, 2Ks. He's a Ruby Amethyst player. Probably one of the most staunch Ruby Amethyst players out right now. He's really good.
He's like ranked number 4 on Pixelborn right now.
Yeah, he's No I'm Not on Pixelborn. Anyway, we pull up to the place, and everybody immediately is like, we got the wrong place, because it doesn't look like a game store at all. It doesn't. And then we walk in, and we're in like the foyer of one of those dentist office, and all the lights are off, but like one of the doors to the side is being held open by like a loose brick. So like light is coming through, and so we're like, okay. So we step back there, and there's like a tiny little game store, I guess. Okay, no big deal. So we register for the tournament. 11 people register for this Lorcana 1K with a $40 entry fee.
Yeah, that was kind of expensive, but it was fun.
They didn't get the turnout that they wanted, and it was kind of expensive, and it was in the middle of nowhere in what felt like an abandoned dentist office. So, okay, that's kind of how the day's going. There's 11 players, so one player gets the round one bye, and it's me. I don't have to play. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I go and I get food for the rest of the car. I get back, and the guy says to me, he's like, hey, the owner of the store is like, hey, attendance was so bad, we're actually cutting the prize support in half. So instead of being a 1K, it's a $500 tournament. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, was everybody else in the tournament cool with that? And he was like, sure. And I was like, okay. Like I guess I'm already here. I've already drove, so I can be cool if everybody else is cool. So I sit down and I wait for like my next round. And so round 2 gets paired, and I'm up against Zan Syed, car mate. And then we decide, for whatever reason, Zan's pretty confident he can win out, and other stuff going on, that he's going to concede to me. So we say to the guy, like, hey, Zan's going to give it to me. And then the owner of the store looks at us, and he's like, well, that would be collusion. So you guys still have to play your games. And we were like, what do you mean? But I'm going to win. He's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not in control of what happens in your games, but like, you still have to play them. So Zan and I shuffle up. We deal out 7 cards to ourselves, and he proceeds to ink a card every turn while I kill him over the course of 2 games. Probably the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me at a turn. I felt so embarrassed.
It's not humiliating. I felt like I hadn't lost at all, and I felt like it was the best move for us. Like, I feel like in my deck I have a lot more control of my outcomes, just because I play like Ursula's Cauldron. It just like kind of scopes the game a little bit differently, and so I wanted to guarantee one of us making top 4. Mm-hmm. But at the time I thought that there were 9 players, but there were actually 11, which threw the math off.
Right. And so, I drove 3 hours to get this tournament. I woke up at like 7 in the morning or whatever. Now it's been 2 rounds. I still haven't played Lorcana. So round 3 gets paired, and my opponent walks up to me. He's like, hey, we can draw into the top 4. Do you just want to draw? And I kind of like, it didn't sound right that we could both draw into the top 4, but I was pretty sure that I could draw into the top 4. So I was like, okay, that's fine with me. And so we drew. And so for me, another hour went by. Like, I haven't played Lorcana all day at this point. And then the guy announces, he does a cut. He's like, all right, I'm announcing the top 4.
And I won my round, by the way.
Zan won his round. I'm doing my tournament report.
What? I'm part of this.
And so so he announces the top 4, and I get in, but my opponent doesn't. And I look at him, and I'm like, hey, I thought we drew. You didn't get in? And he was just like, guess not. He seemed totally not bothered by it at all. It was so weird. And so the guy was like, the owner of the store was like, okay, so this is the top 4, and let's get started. But then Zan goes, wait a minute. If there were 11 players, like, the tiebreakers are too clogged. There should be one more round to like figure out the real top 4. And obviously, if you've ever been to a card game tournament, you know that there's nothing anybody can do after the cut. But Zan is my bestie, so I just go, hey, he's right. There should be another round. And the guy's like, well, basically, there's already been a cut, so we can't do another round. But what we can do is we can cut to top 8. And everyone's like, yeah, that'll work. And so the whole 11-player tournament then cuts to a top 8 of single elimination, which basically invalidated the past 3 rounds. But I'm fine with it because at this point, I'm top 8 of a tournament that I haven't played around in yet. So I'm excited to play around. And so my opponent in the top 8 is the guy I drew with in round 3. So I look at him and I'm like, haha, it looks like we're going to have to play anyway. And he looks at me, he's like, I don't get it. So, okay, I get to play my first round of the day, and it's exciting. And so I play yellow steel, amber steel, and I'm up against a sapphire amethyst deck. Um, Kind of off meta. I haven't really seen many other sapphire amethyst deck. I think his deck was like pretty good in that it was sort of trying to do ruby amethyst thing because it had all the removal spells and the ramp and the Hades. But I just sort of got into it, got over it. You know, they have the 3/6 Maleficent, which lines up really well with my Rapunzel because you can get 3 damage on your guy pretty easy against that Maleficent. So I just had a blast with that. I won my round. And then we got to the top 4, and it was our car and one other guy. So it was me, Kendall, Zan, and then one other guy, and we all split. And since they cut the prize payout in half, it was 125 to the 4 of us. And then we went home. So just to recap, everybody, my tournament was I played 1 round against Sapphire Amethyst, and I won $125.
Yeah, that ended up being the best case scenario since we opted for the extra round. If we didn't offer the extra round, I was going to get 6th place and not be able, like not have a chance at making top 4. But luckily we all got paired against different people in top 8 and were able to all split top 4. I ended up playing against the purple red mirror, and that was really interesting because my opponent was not playing any brooms or any Mickeys. And so the game just became that as long as I'm able to deal with all of my opponent's threats, that they would mill out. And the thing that I had not considered was that top 8 was actually timed. And so top 8 clock started, and my opponent had 2 cards when we went to time. It took we only played 1 game, and so my opponent ended up decking themselves in time, and I ended up winning.
Okay, so that sort of brings us into, I know last week we talked a lot about if you're competitive and you're playing Lorcana, you know, the big thing that might be holding somebody back from playing Ruby Amethyst is that they don't want to play the mirrors. You're pretty experienced in the mirrors, and so if you had to do like a quick like sort of crash course to somebody, you're going to teach them how to win the mirrors. What's important? What do you ink? And you know, like how do I win? How do I win the mirror?
Well, first of all, it depends on how large your deck is, right? What I mean by that is like larger than 60 cards has become more popular. In that tournament I played 64 cards. In the past, I've played 66 and 68 cards. And that was mainly just in case I played against whole new world strategies, and it gave you an advantage in the mirror. What I mean by that is, if you're playing a 60 card version, you can't afford to play your friends on the other side. You actually have to ink that card. And the reason why you have to ink that card is because otherwise you will not have enough inkables to do some of the combos, which are Elsa, tap down your opponent's characters, play Aladdin, give it rush, and attack one of their characters. So you need a total of 16 inked cards. So most 60 card versions have to ink the Mauis, have to ink the Maleficents, the 3 ink Maleficents, and they have to ink Gastons. Basically anything that involves drawing a card that obviously is a magic mirror. So that also includes queens. You have to ink all of those cards. And so since I was playing 64 cards, I can afford to cast my friends on the other side.
Okay.
Because I have some extra cards in my deck that will allow me to finish the game otherwise.
Do you think your build is best tailored to beat the mirror?
Yeah, I think that my deck is definitely best tailored to beat the mirror. It also gives you the most amount of control. Since I'm playing 64 cards, majority of those cards that I'm adding are Ursula's Cauldron,
Mhm.
but that ends up allowing me to sculpt my deck better than someone else.
So you're sculpting to like hit an ideal game plan. So I want you to spend it because you explained this to me earlier, and I really liked what you said about like what the ideal get. Because I feel like players get a little lost in that mirror match, especially about what they're supposed to be doing. Because it's like pretty clear that you can spend all your resources drawing as many cards as possible, but I'm like pretty sure that that just kills you. So if I'm playing the mirror match, like what am I trying to do?
You are trying to get yourself into a lore situation that puts pressure on your opponent to try and deal with your stuff, um, like in the worst way possible. Like the more that you can force them to wrath the board, the better it ends up being, right? Because once you get them to 19, that means you only need one threat to put them in a tough situation. Um, some important facts about the matchup is you want to be playing some number of shields. I play two. Some number of white rabbits pocket watch. I play three. And the reason why you play those is because you can play Mickey and then play a bunch of brooms. Like for example, if they have a tapped Ursula, which you can tap with your own Elsa, you can then rush a bunch of brooms or one broom that attacks it over and over again. You attack it, it comes back to your hand, you play it again, you play it again. And what that's doing is since you're going to be going through your entire deck, it's giving you more Elsas, more brooms, more Aladdin's or more Mickey's, and that essentially gives you more ways to beat them.
So you're leveraging your little guys. You're trying to create what you've described as like a lore situation. They have to it gets to the point I've seen in your matches where you'll play like a broom and a Rafiki, and then they have to sort of wrath that because if they let you untap, then you'll get to 16, and then you're only one away from the combo. Effectively, the Splinter Twin combo that you end up getting is you'll have 18 lore, and then you have the 16 mana to do Elsa tap your guy, Aladdin give it haste, and end the game that way. Is that, would you say that that's like the main way that you end the game when you're in the mirror match?
Well, that's kind of in the middle of the pack, right? So you have to assess what your opponent has, and when you're playing the mirror match. So if they have a shield and they have a white rabbit's pocket watch, that means that you are under the threat of, if your guys are tapped, that they can play Aladdin, give it rush, untap it. That means they get to deal with both, and it's a 4 point swing, right? You lose 4 lore and they gain 4 lore.
Mm-hmm.
And so playing a Rafiki and playing a broom while you have 2 shields and they don't have any of those other things makes a lot of sense. So in the middle of the game, you can force them to wrath the board. But later on in the game, it becomes more of a liability, and so you want to only put out one broom so they can't go like Elsa, Aladdin, give it rush, attack, untap it, attack it again.
Sure.
And they can even do that with a Maleficent, a 9-mana Maleficent, and a broom, right? Because they can hit the broom first and then hit the Maleficent. So there's been cases where I've dragon fired my own characters in order to prevent them from having that out.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it can get down to the nitty gritty, but if your opponent doesn't understand all these rules, then you're going to have the advantage. Like for example, not having 3 pocket watches is going to give you a better Mickey Broom situation than they could ever have.
Mm-hmm. So you think it is a pretty skill intensive mirror?
It's a very skill intensive mirror.
Is there anything else you want to speak to with regards to maybe like what are your best keeps in your opening hand? I feel like if somebody gets that, or what else would they need to win the mirror?
Well, it's executing the game plan is easier said than done. So I would say you need to have like your organizational skills on point. What I mean by that is the way you set out your inkwell, what you're doing during your opponent's turn that sets you up to do it well when it is your turn. That stuff is important because if you're not doing that efficiently, you will not even finish game one.
Wow.
Right? So one thing that I found is I can untap all my items and my inkwell during my opponent's turn because I can't use them in any way
Sure.
during their turn. And when you're getting up to 18, 19, 22 inked inked cards, it ends up making a significant amount of time difference.
I noticed your opponent in the top 8 sort of was like still kind of figuring out what they were trying to do with their ink in terms of like the best way to, ready it every turn and ready everything. And that did take a lot of time off you guys' clock, was you just moving the cards around. But it is kind of odd to talk about on like in the terms of this podcast, like how could somebody really practice doing that except for just like watch the players that you like who do it well. You know what I mean? That's a tough one to practice.
Yeah, I mean you can practice it at F&M. That's literally what I did. But everything came at a slower realization. In my first tournament, I definitely wasn't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we played in our third tournament, I was doing it as quickly as I possibly can.
I always like organizing my board. Okay, so is that everything for the mirror?
I mean, for the mirror is the most important card in your opening hand. If you can try and get that into your opening hand, that's important. I will say the most important thing that I would say is have a list of cards that you're going to ink and don't deter from that. It's very rare in the matchup that you end up inking a card and it's not going to end up coming back to bite you if it's a card that you're not supposed to ink.
I mean, do you just want to go ahead and say what cards am I inking?
It depends on the list.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So you have to make that list yourself for whichever version you're playing. But I already said the main ones, which were like Maui,
Right.
Friends on the Other Side, Small Maleficent.
You're inking Small Maleficents?
Well, if you're playing the 60 card version.
Yeah, if you're playing the 60 card version, that makes sense. Which I don't recommend, right? I mean, I don't like the 60 card version as much as some of the other ones.
I mean, I like. It depends on what I think I'm gonna play against the most in the tournament. But right now, if I was gonna go play in a tournament, I'd play a 64 card version.
What do you think? Are there tech cards? You know what I mean? Like for the mirror for the matchup, is there a way to is there like a mirror breaker card that you can think of?
I mean, it's just Broom and Mickey.
Okay. What about Befuddle?
There are some people who play Befuddle, and what that prevents you from doing is basically if your opponent, if you weren't able to amass a lot of lore, what's going to end up happening is that you can play a bunch of brooms, but your opponent's gonna not need to let them die.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just end up milling yourself out because you didn't force them to deal with your brooms. And if they don't deal with your brooms, that means you can't play a broom to put a broom back into your deck. So I think that Befuddle is such a terrible card that it gives me the least number of outs out of a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
That I would never want to play that in my deck.
Well, I mean, the beauty of a Lorcana card that you can ink is Befuddle. I was actually playing Amber Steel. I had 4 Hakuna Matatas in my deck, and that's one of my favorite cards to draw because you just play it. Every turn I feel like I'm agonizing over what to play for ink. What's my next few turns going to look like? Can I get rid of this Tinkerbell? What if I draw a big Tinkerbell? What if what if the Captain Hook? Should I play it on turn 1 in the blind? It's tough. It's even right now tough for me to say. But the best thing about Hakuna Matata is you just slam that thing on the table and you say, "I'm playing an ink." You don't have to feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that's only because we're one set in. As more sets come out, the decision is only going to get more difficult.
Do you think that there's design space for them to print something that's like when you ink this effect?
Can you give me an example?
What if there was a card that said when you ink this, take a damage off of one of your characters in yellow?
That seems counterintuitive with some of the item stuff that they have going on,
Mm-hmm.
because items can just do that anyways. But yeah, I don't. I mean, in Magic, it's called landfall, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that they could easily print landfall things. I think, but um, yeah, I just can't think of why it would be like so like groundbreaking.
It just makes it easier to know what to play as an ink. I think that that's going to be a design challenge in this game is because I mean this game is primarily directed at people younger than other games like Magic the Gathering. And I think right now I think the decision points that I'm dealing with when I play Amber Steel in tournaments are like kind of difficult. I think like, oh, what should I play as an ink here? I can get stuck sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the game. That's the difference between like a a great player and a good player and a bad player is that you're going to be inking things that you're not supposed to ink, and you may not realize it initially. You may feel like, oh, I didn't draw the right thing, but you had the right thing, and it was better to hold it the whole time.
I think the other, I just think that what I'm saying is that there's going to be design space for them that they can open up where they can sort of play with other like ways to make it clear what you play as an ink. You know what I mean? I think that that would be good design. I don't mind because I didn't mind having Hakuna Matata in my deck. You know what I mean? Hakuna Matata to me was like fine as a card that I always ink and don't have to think about. And well, it's in the deck because your aerials can find it, and you want to have a higher count of songs because my aerials, if they break every time, it's not actually that great of a card, especially if you're not playing a whole new world. So I was looking for more songs, so that's why Hakuna Matata was in. I did end up casting it once in the tournament, and it was pretty good. Although I also only ever played one match in that last tournament.
That is fair. I will say that okay, if it does come down to hey, you should ink this card, a lot of the times it's just gonna be a harder decision because sometimes you're gonna need that card, and your other card is saying that hey, I need to ink this card. So it didn't make the decision easier. It didn't make the decision 100%. It just made the decision harder.
So it's not just the two deck metagame. We can spend a little bit of time talking about some of the other decks and maybe like where you think they fit. Last weekend, while we were playing in a tournament, there was also one going on in, I think it was Florida, where Dan Ward top aided with the.
That was Florida. Why did I think that was Baltimore?
It might have been Baltimore, but anyway, Dan Ward top aided with the Sapphire Emerald High Five deck. That is, it's probably my second favorite deck. I'm like a big fan of the idea behind High Five, where your creatures are sort of operating as burn spells. What do you think of that deck and how it fits in the metagame? Is it like a challenge for Ruby Amethyst to beat High Five?
Well, there's certain versions of that deck that can be challenging, but I don't think that there's been a deck builder that's been able to build that version of the deck that's specifically good. But the major problem is that the Ruby Amethyst deck might be the best deck, but it's certainly not the most played deck. The most played deck and the best performing deck is the Yellow Steel deck, right? And so with Yellow Steel being the biggest player in the room and the most amount of players playing it makes it the scariest deck. It makes the High Five deck not a great option, right? Which is blue green, right?
Yeah, Emerald and Sapphire, that blue green High Five. Okay, so
I think it's definitely just a tier 2 deck. I think that Dan Ward is a great player, a great Magic player, and I think that his skills with an aggressive strategy just transfer right on over where he's probably playing against players that are not exactly on his level. So he could play he could play a starter deck in top 8 tournaments.
What other decks are you interested in? Do you think anything else fits into the metagame right now?
Um. The only other deck that I feel like is in the same realm as High Five is the yellow blue deck. I
Mm-hmm.
think that deck has shown some decent results, and when I've played against it, there's been certain draws I was unable to deal with. But again, I think it's a tier two deck. I think that this is just the first set, and it's okay that there are two tier one decks, and then there are two tier two decks, and then the rest of the decks are kind of tier three and below.
Um, all the Emerald Amethyst enjoyers out here, they're going to call our podcast and come knock down our doors for not including them in the list of tier one or two decks. But honestly, I've never come close to losing to Emerald Amethyst.
I haven't either, and I mean I think that the biggest indicator for this is, I mean you just have to look at pixel-born data, right? And
Yeah.
pixel-born data is just like yellow steel number one, and then ruby amethyst number two,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else afterwards. And so we can trust in the data that pixel-born is providing.
I like my version of Amber Steel. I really feel like the big light bulb moment of we don't need to be playing a whole new world has sort of like caused us to create the best version of the deck where it's good against the mirror because we're not playing Lilo, which I think is a really big liability.
I agree.
I mean, I just think Lilo is horrible in the mirror.
Yep.
And then, but then we also have the Beast Mirrors, which are like really good against Ruby Amethyst in a lot of contexts. And of course, we have Beast. I think disrupting their items is so important. So I'm really happy with where my deck is now. But no, I agree with you. We're in the first set. It was only out for like, it's only going to be alone for like 2-ish months, but I think they were pretty fun. I think everybody figuring out the metagame and it shaking down. I like had a good experience with the first set of Lorcana, not from a card distribution standpoint, obviously, but
Yeah.
from like a metagame standpoint. I think it was fun getting into the metagame with everybody and figuring it out.
No, I mean honestly, they did a great job. I'm really looking forward to the future. And one thing I want to disagree about Disney is that I think Disney is for all ages. I don't think that they have a target demographic in just children. I think that at majority of, at least the competitive side, it hasn't been children. It's been, I mean, I would say ages from 16 to 35. That's the main demographic that I've seen.
I think that's a good point. I'll take that disagreement. Of course, in the competitive card game scene, we're going to get a lot of the old players. It'll be interesting in a few years to see what the player base sort of looks like. My thoughts are skew a little younger, a little bit like Pokemon, but I could be totally wrong about that. It could be, like you said, truly diverse. There was at our tournament that we played in last weekend, there was an older gentleman. He was a really cool guy, probably the nicest guy there.
Yeah.
He had just got done back-to-back Disney cruises.
Yeah.
And then we were talking to him, and he was like, yeah, I actually I met the creator of Lorcana, and he got me into the game. He had some decks, and he showed me how to play on the Disney cruises. So now I'm looking to play here now that I'm stateside. And everybody listening to him was like, dude, what? He was in, I guess, the Disney Vacation Club. So it'll be interesting to see who all comes. I want to talk a little bit about next week's episode. I think we got spoilers on the brain. We're probably doing spoilers. So everybody brush up because we're going to tell you what the new decks are going to be in the format. Hopefully we get a few more this week. I think we probably will.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited about the spoilers. Right now, it seems like it's leaning towards Ruby Amethyst all the way,
Mhm.
but I'm really hoping that they spread the love to some of the other colors.
So far, Amethyst is getting like a lot of really good tools, and Ruby Amethyst is already the deck, so that's what people are going to be looking at. I can't wait to see these new Sapphire cards. Right, the Cogsworth is interesting. I don't know where I'm going to go with that. I think that looks like a big good inclusion, but I don't want to talk too much about it because the decks that we know now could be totally gone by midway through spoiler season. But it does look like Amethyst is getting a lot of good tools. I can't wait to talk about it next week.
Yeah, same here. Well, let's wrap this up.
All right, dude, sign us off, man. You've been listening to the Infinite Lorcana podcast. I'm Jeremy Bertarioni.
And I'm Syed.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.